let's welcome Keith Tompkins.
Okay, let me get this thing turned on here and make sure it's working. I want to say first, thanks for everybody for having me. Is this working now?
Yes.
Okay. I really appreciate you inviting me down, and especially to Pat. He's been extremely good to me, and I appreciate that. Just want to take the time to say thank you. My main purpose for being here today is not just to show you the kind of work I do, but maybe to inspire people to take what they're doing now and bring it to a different level. And I teach a lot of classes. I go a lot of places and do demonstrations. And I think that the one common thing I see is a lot of people are stuck. And they say, I'm here, but I'd rather be here. So hopefully I can show you one way of reaching your goals today. So, and at any time, if somebody has a question, just raise your hand and interrupt me. I'm easy going. It's all good. So if I don't explain myself well enough, just let me know. I'm going to start with a very simple project, the simplest project we can do, and go from there and show how you can put your own personality, put your own little spin on anything you make, even as simple as a bottle stopper. I'm going to start with a bottle stopper, and what got me doing this was somebody stopped me during a show. How's the volume on this? Is this good?
Yeah.
They said, would you critique my bottle stoppers for me? I'm like, okay, they're bottle stoppers. and I saw he had some technical issues, torn grain, and the shapes were kind of amorphous. Nothing really stood out, so I tried to talk to him about it. And I thought it was kind of funny to myself. I'm an artist. I'm not a bottle stopper maker. So that's my own personal joke to myself. And then I started thinking about it. I'd never turned one. So I'm out at dinner with my brother and his family. We're sitting in a restaurant, and I look across the street. There's like a tavern. And there in that window is a martini glass, a neon martini glass with an olive in it. Anybody ever seen those?
Yeah.
They're like everywhere.
Right.
So I said, you know what? That would make a kind of a neat bottle stopper. So I'm going to make one. Let's make a kind of a special one. So I went home and I made that bottle stopper. And for someone who never turned a bottle stopper before, now it seems like it's all I do. I have enough requests for them, and if people want to buy them, I've become like the bottle stopper king. Totally unintentional, but it's interesting. So even on this little object that you would think is just knock it out for $5 or whatever, you can actually make it your own. So I'm going to start with this, and we'll see what I can come up with. And then I want to show how my basic stopper works and how I can carry this idea further, and further along. So I'm going to get this prepared to make my stopper. But I'm just going to turn end grain and level this bottom of this turning out. And I'm using a spindle gouge, and I'm going straight into the end grain. You'll see I'm right on the center line of the turning. And I'm just allowing the feed naturally feed itself in. If you have trouble with end grain, this is a very nice technique, just straight in. And no torn grain. One other gentleman I was talking to said, I turn bottle stoppers for craft shows. They take me 45 minutes. About 5 minutes to turn, 40 minutes to sand all the torn grain out. And so he went to one of my classes. And by the time he got done, he called me back a few months later. He said, I'm down to 3 minutes per stopper. No more torn grain, just turn like sanding. And so technique makes a difference. I'm going to drill this out. I'm just going to take my skew chisel and make a divot to start that drill on center. And then move my tool rest and drill a hole in the bottom. And I use the Ruth Nile stainless steel stoppers. If anybody uses these, it's a very nicely made item. And I'm just going to thread this.
Those little threaders are awesome. If you've ever tried to not use it, those do make it so much easier to thread bottle stoppers you've never been.
Yeah, it works really well. It's a ratcheting tap handle. These taps aren't really made for wood, but they work okay.
Is that Ruth's tap?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, if it's just a 3/8, whatever pitch it is. Yeah, 3/8, 16. This piece of wood is holly. And I just want to make sure I'm deep enough. It should be. Now,
Yeah, you can hold that and just turn it on and we'll.
if you take me to the emergency room, with broken wrist. But Pat mentioned I worked at a correctional facility. I work at Greenhaven. We have 2,200 inmates. It's a maximum facility. We have a pretty good woodworking program, so if anybody's interested in a very good 25-year-to-life program afterwards, talk to me, and I can hook you up. I've never got a reply yet, so.
We could send Pat.
What's that?
We could send Pat.
Yeah, there you go.
He's already experienced her.
So what I can do, I'm going to level this bottom out a little bit. I've got a little bit of a chatter. I'll just use my skew as a scraper. Just level the bottom of this thing. I'm going to try every time I move the tool rest to shut the lathe off for safety's sake.
You need to move that drill.
Pardon?
You need to take that drill out for safety's sake.
Yeah, I should probably move that too, huh? I'm going to pop this in my chuck now. So I've got everything centered, my ball centered, the way I'm going to mount it in chuck so everything stays true as I work with it.
David, is there a way to fix this sound? It sounds muffled.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we can do with it.
I know in the back, they may be hearing it.
Y'all hear it okay?
It's pretty choppy.
Yeah,
It's like the plug is loose or
I
something.
know when I first started, I thought it was turned off, and I turned the volume up, and I turned it back down, and I noticed that suddenly, so I may have not put that volume thing.
Oh, I got the volume. It's just, I don't know if it's
Some distortion, some,
mustache or something.
what about the microphone, they got it buried in his coat?
I'm going to throw my rim up. I'm going to proceed to turn the martini glass. knock myself loose a little bit here. I want a nice square shoulder, but it doesn't look like it stayed that way. We discussed yesterday the importance of a nice square shoulder. Here I messed it up myself. We'll chew that up now if it'll stay there. Now you'll notice when I turn, I use my hands a lot just to feed the cut. Just by opening my hand and closing my hand, I'll let that tool feed in. I pull back, I release my grip, I pull back, release my grip. Gives me a lot of control. I've got the tool braced against my side, move away from the turning. And it allows me to make really fine, delicate cuts. Now before I get too small of a diameter here, I'm going to hollow the inside of my martini glass. And I'm going to do that with a spindle gouge. This is the same technique we did yesterday. And I use a tool with a very swept back grind. Let's see if we can get a picture. So you can see the grind is very well swept back.
Sounded better, yeah.
So I see my volume got louder for some reason.
Sounds better.
Is that good?
Yes.
Again, I'm going to start on the center line of this turning. Just make a divot with my spindle gouge. And then pull outward. Make a divot. Pull outward. You see what my hand is doing? I'm just making a fist pulling in and out. So all my control is with my left hand. The tool is braced here. I can lean against the lathe for even more stability. The tool is facing approximately 11 o'clock. Now with this technique, the more I raise this tool up so the foot is straight up, the more chance I have on the catch. I get a cleaner cut. So there's a balancing act here. No chance of a catch, and the more I roll it up this way, I get extreme possibility of a catch. So we're trying not to get a catch. Now, I get extremely thin. I'll brace my hand against the turning with my finger. And that allows me to go thinner and thinner and thinner with very little vibration. So once that's hollow, I'll move my tool rest and I'll finish this section of the goblet. You can see I left a little bit of mass down here to work with. spindle grain orientation, so I'm always working from my large diameter course down to my small. And since this is an item that might possibly be used, I don't want to go too thin on the stem so that it breaks off easily. So I'm intentionally going to leave it a little bit heavy. And you'll see I use the same technique over and over again. I just let my hand relax, let the tool feed in, bring it back. And just come back and remove the excess material. Now you can see that same cut I did into end grain initially, I'm doing again right here. The idea is I hope to get clean enough of a cut that I don't have to do any sanding at all, if anything, just minimal. Now I'm sizing the base of my martini glass. And here I'm doing a cut. See, it's unsupported. I'm going from air to the wood. I teach a course, 10 essential cuts. And to me, this is a very essential cut where we go from air to wood with no bevel rubbing. Get that bevel just barely rubbing and then proceed with the cut. And it's almost the same cut you start on the rim of a bowl where you start that first cut. Your bevel's really not touching until you get a little bit of a starting point, and then you go ahead and feed the gouge in. So it's very similar to that cut we start with a ball. You can see the control it gives me with my hand. I'm just making a fist, opening my fist and closing my fist. So all my control comes from there. My body is pretty much anchored. I can move any way I want. I can lean against the lathe, and all my control comes from my left hand. Just the way I manipulate my hands lets me really have a lot of control over the tool. I'm going to finesse with this just a little bit. I'm going to sand it lightly, and I'll do a semi-finished job on this because I think we're going to leave it to get donated later on. So we're just about done with this section. I see a small spot I don't like and I want to fix that. How many times do we say, well, I better not take that last cut? But and sometimes you just have to do it. Now this martini glass is going to sit on top of a simulated cork because when we think of wine, we could easily think of a cork. When we think of bottle stoppers, usually they're made out of cork also. So I'm going to do a little illusion here. So it'll have the appearance of sitting on a cork even though it's really not. I guess it's fairly realistic because I had a lady from Florida order one of my stoppers and she emailed me, how do I take care of the cork part? I said, it's the same piece of wood, it's not a real cork. So I guess it worked out. She thought it was a real cork. Well, sometimes I'll use my skew chisel as a scraper. So I make all my tenons with it, and sometimes I'll use it just for fine scraping a surface. That way, I don't even need to sand that surface. Very light touch. So where a lot of times you see that torn end grain, you put a finish on it, it really pops once you do that because the grain is so torn up. Now there's no torn grain at all. And my last step, I'm going to take my skew chisel long point and make a very clean line where my martini glass is going to meet the top of my cork. Now, let's take that out of the chop. I'll unpack a picture here. And now I'm going to put in the Ruth Niles drive for a bottle stopper. Now, when I initially started this, I knocked it off center a little bit. Remember that? So this is probably going to wobble a little bit. Which, for a demo, I guess is okay. Sometimes I purposely knock them off center so I can make a martini glass that's tilted. And I made a series called Tompkins Stoppers, and they were leaning. Did anybody see the article in AAW magazine? And that's what I did. I just put it in a chuck, and I tilted a little bit and gave it another little axis point. So now I'm going to turn the cork part. And I knew it was going to wobble a little bit, but that's okay. You see I'm starting from air to wood, no support here. So I touch, I get it started, then I go ahead and cut. That's one of the trick you'll hear sometimes. Never start from air to wood. Start in the center and work your way out. But you see, it is entirely possible to do, and sometimes it's the only way to turn it. We want to taper this just like a real cork. And we want to end up just the right size for our bottle stopper. That looks pretty good, and we're going to sand this lightly. So now we're going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to take my wood burner. This is just a coal wood cup. It's a nice light unit, perfect for bringing with me when I travel. And we're going to make a simulated cork. And some people might be thinking by now, gee, that's a lot of work for a bottle stopper. Excuse me. Let this heat up for a minute.
I have a question. How dry is that piece of wood you're working with?
The question is, how dry was this piece of wood? This piece of holly is kiln dried. Now, I made a joke yesterday that skew chisel is good for several things, including working as a can opener.
That was a joke?
I do have a can of shellac I need open, so if anybody has a screwdriver or some kind of something to pry this open with, I really don't want to use my skew chisel for that.
There's one in the cabinet if somebody get it in the toolbox in there. Look, it looks like Terry's coming to the rescue.
All right, thank you. So I'm just making a series of dots with my wood burner to make it look a little more realistic. We'll hit the top edge too. Knock the corner off a little bit. And once I'm happy with that,
You used your gouge instead of the skew.
I guess the gouge works just as well. So we're done with that for now.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you use the threaded chuck insert to begin with instead of mounting it twice?
I could have. The question, why did I use a threaded insert now and I didn't before? What I wanted to do is have it in a chuck with a little more holding power at first and just turn the cork on the thread. You see it slipped when it was in the chuck. My shoulder wasn't real well. A piece chipped off and then it wobbled. So now I kind of jinxed myself. The extra precaution I took kind of backfired on me. I have turned them completely on this threaded insert. And as the next step, I'm going to show you that sometimes I have to, and why I have to. I'm going to bring the tool rest up for a little bit of support. I'm going to take some plain old shellac, and I'm going to paint the cork. And when I give it 2 or 3 coats, it's going to actually look about the color of a cork. And it's funny, the first one of these I did, I was doing a demonstration for Totally Turning up in Saratoga, New York, and I hadn't brought a demonstrator piece for the auction. And the only thing I really had on me was one of my bottle stoppers, so I put it in the auction. And when they had the auction that evening, it ended up being the highest bid of the evening. And it got a standing ovation, so I said, gee, I might be onto something here.
Is that amber shellac?
Yes, this is amber shellac. So I carefully do the top edge. And it starts to appear like this little martini glass is actually sitting on a cork. And like I said, I think the cork makes sense because when you think of a bottle of wine, you've got to get a corkscrew to get the cork out. So that kind of ties in with the theme pretty nicely, I think. Now you can turn this entire piece with a skew chisel. So that'd be a little practice for afterwards. You guys give that a try. So there's one coat, we'll give it one more and then we'll go on to the next step. So the idea is now, I took a life experience just sitting with my brother, seeing a neon sign in a window. Something that we've seen a million times and never paid any attention to. All of a sudden, now I've got a bottle stopper that is kind of uniquely mine. I've never seen one quite like it before. So we're going to take this out now for a minute and let it dry. In fact, we can pass that around if you'd like, as long as you don't hold it by the shellac. Now we're going to put the next part in here. Most of us as wood turners like trees, and myself included. And I grow cherry trees, I grow apple trees. I live on a address called Vineyard Court, and it was an old vineyard, so I have grapes everywhere. I have cherry trees, apples, pears, and so I took a natural part of my experience. Every spring I make cherry jelly, cherry pies, my wife and I. So putting a cherry in my martini glass is a natural thing to think of. So what I did, I took a small piece of pink ivory. I used Tite Bond and I just glued an end grain directly to a piece of yellow heart scrap. And so I'm going to turn a cherry out of that. Does anybody here turn pink ivory? It's a really, really nice wood to turn. It's extremely strong. So you can get a lot of detail in very small diameters out of it. The nice thing about turning on the center line of a spindle, I could start high up on the tool, rotate it around, come around, go all the way through that cut, follow it right through the end, and actually go into the end grain with it, all in one motion. So that helps me shape my cherry. So we talked about a little bit how one turning can lead to another, and that's one of the main themes of my demo today. Is I started with a cherry in a martini glass, and then I started thinking, well, what else can I turn? So I turned olives, lemons, what else did I put in my martini glass? Yeah, lemon wedges, which were segmented.
What do you sell these for?
I wholesale these for $100. And so the gallery gets whatever. And so some people gasp that it gets that kind of price, but I actually have a lot of time, and by the time they're finished, and some of them are pretty complicated. So now that I've got this roughed out a little bit, I'm going to clean up where the stem goes in with my skew chisel. It's got a little bit of, I haven't reached quite the end yet, so I'm going to fix that up. Again, I'm gonna lay my skew flat, just use it as a scraper. A lot of times we're told that's a no-no, but if it's for nothing else, it works very well on extremely hard wood in a scraping position. And this will leave a surface that needs no sanding at all. And it really helps you finesse the shape.
He's scraping with handle lower than the point. It looked like it from over here.
It could be. My main thing, I want to have that cutting edge pretty much on the center, so if my handle's low, I'd rather have it higher up, of course. But the skew acts like a negative brake scraper, so it doesn't tend to catch like a regular scraper. So that's one nice advantage of using that tool. Now, a lot of people say you should never use a skew chisel as a scraper. But I try to break every rule I can. What's that?
That's why you're in prison.
That's why you're in prison, too.
Funny story, when I was younger, my mom said, if you don't straighten out, you're going to end up in prison. And I said to her the other day, I said, you know, Mom, you were right. I ended up there anyway. So we'll sand this a little bit. And then we'll part it off. This is probably 180 or 220. And if you've never worked with this stuff, this is great. You can turn diameter so small with pink ivory that it seems impossible, but it's very strong wood. And that'll be fine.
We got the glass here. It looks like an awful big cherry for a small size.
We're going to finish this up now. Now, for turning a cherry, we're naturally going to need a stem. So, before I part it off, we should add a stem to it. So, I didn't have anything small enough to drill for a stem, so I took a Proxon grinder that stopped working. I took the chuck off of it. I threaded a piece of steel rod to accept this chuck, and now I can put any size bit, cutter, anything in this little Proxon tool. So I've got a drill bit now that's out of a carburetor jet drill assortment. I don't know the exact size of it. It's a number 71, whatever that means. I'm going to drill a hole in here. And that should give me enough to fit my stem in. Now we're going to part this off.
71's a good size for an orifice, gas orifice.
And again, we're going to take our skew chisel. We want it fairly sharp, so I'm going to show you my honing technique really quick. I use a diamond plate when I hone these things. And I've got an article coming out in the next April edition of AAW magazine on using the skew chisel, so hopefully you guys will pick that up and read it. But I just rock it until I can feel it sitting flat on the stone, and I just pull it toward me. I rock it, I pull it toward me, I pull it toward me.
She gonna blow, she gonna blow.
I flip it over and do the other side. Now everybody's got their own honing technique, but I found that if you go back and forth, you tend to round over. so I try to avoid that. And from carving chisels, here I can usually have a big flat surface that I can go back and forth on the top, back and forth on the bottom. But all my carving tools as well, I draw toward me. So I set it here and I pull. I try to stay as consistent as I can. So I'll end up with a shiny spot in the front, a shiny spot in the back. So I've honed here and here, and I've got a hollow grind. And I think you can see that.
Yeah.
So now we're going to part this off using the skew chisel. I'm going to use a long point. I found that this long point is really nice for getting down into some fairly inaccessible spots. So I touch, get it cutting, and I don't cut with the tip necessarily. I like getting above that tip and slightly riding the bevel. Like I said, this is a hard customer right here. This is a hard piece of wood. I want to knock this little edge off in my way. There we go. Using a long point gives you a lot of control. But you can see how small this is getting, smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's still strong. You'd think it would just pop off of here, but it won't. I'm going to actually have to break that off. So we're going to sand that a little bit, and I'll snap it off. Now initially I made my stems for my cherries out of ebony. And they were really thin, and they were prone to break. So I stopped doing that. And instead, I use a piece of wire. I got that all pre-cut. So what I've done, I've taken a standard piece of wire, cut a piece off, hammered the end flat to act as the end of the stem. See how strong that is? So there's my cherry with a stem. And then what we're going to do is insert that in a martini glass. So I've got a martini glass with a cherry in it, sitting on a cork. And then I'm going to mix up epoxy and fill the martini glass so it looks like it's got liquid in it. Now, once that comes back, I'll CA glue this in. Now, the whole point of that exercise was I made a martini glass sitting on a piece of cork. It's got cherry in it. So, what else can I do with this?
A worm in the cherry.
And a wire for stuff. So see, since I'm using metal in my piece, I'm a multimedia artist, so I can charge more. So what if, has anybody seen this joiner pendant plate?
Yeah. That's a wire bender.
Yeah, you could use it for a wire bender too.
I see what it is now. Yeah.
So I can mount this on my lathe at any point. I can put it right in my chuck, which I sometimes do, or put it right on the same thing that that bottle stopper's in. Take a set screw and put that in the back of my stopper, like this. Now I can take my stopper out and put it in any position on this plate. So now I'm a multi-axis artist as well. So then, if you see the article I did, we've got a cork like this, then we've got a cork like this. Then we've got a martini glass hanging over the edge, like that. And that's how I did it, using that joiner plate with two different centers. So now I've got a little visual interest happening. It's like, oh, it looks like it's going to tip over. I can take that pendant plate, and I can put it in my chuck, and I can knock it out of kilter a little bit. And so now I can create a stem like this. It's crooked, comes down, straightens out, sits on top of another cork that it can be all off kilter too. So now I'm stacking things up, look like it's all going to fall down. So I can do more and more and more and get carried away with it. So I did 6 or 8 of them. Betty Scarpino asked me to do a series, and she would, put it in a magazine. So that one you see is a result of just my initial one sitting in a restaurant with my brother. That's where it started. So this thing has been published in 60 countries. This photographs from the English Woodturner magazine published an article about my work. So 60-some countries have seen this bottle stopper. It's been on HGTV, AAW magazine, sold through galleries throughout the United States, all from sitting out at dinner with my brother looking out the window. And to me, it's mind-boggling. Things we see and we don't pay any attention to. And so what I'm trying to say is start to look at things around you. Take personal experiences that you've seen and put those into your work. Sometimes you'll come to see people like me and try to maybe get some ideas. What do I do that you can use, which is a good thing. And like I said yesterday, take that same idea and apply your own thoughts and feelings and experiences to it, and you'll start to develop your own style of work. And also pay attention and watch how this can progress from this to this, and you never run out of ideas that way. And that's the way I work. I've got another stopper coming. I want to play a little word game for a minute. If I say wine, what words could we associate with wine? Cheese. What word can we associate with cheese? Mouse. Now you see where I'm going with this.
Okay, little mouse sitting in a wine glass with a piece of cheese in his mouth. Sitting on it.
So there's my piece of cheese. There's my martini glass. There's my stopper underneath.
And a drunken mouse.
Jumping mouse. Now you see, you start making connections just thinking about it, and pretty soon, I think a couple people here may have seen my little mouse on World of Woodturners. He's made out of holly. He's airbrushed, so his back is gray. It's got tiny little eyes with a pink ivory nose. The eyes are .034 diameter, the little pupils. In fact,
I used black
the last part of the doll I made is in here for the pupils. And so there's a piece of wire in the pupil in here, so we'll pass that around. So there's my next series. How do you turn a block of cheese?
Cut a circle and cut it into about 6 wedges, 8 wedges.
or a pie.
Or we can do something like this, make a face plate, make a piece here, make a piece here, and put it between centers. So this is going to be spinning this way, and I'm going to put my blank in here.
Cut it off.
So as it's spinning, I spin one part of it, I rotate it, I turn another side, and I put it back on a lathe and turn the rest of the circle here. So I've got one axis here, one axis here, one axis here, and another axis up here from my martini glass. That's an awful lot of work to make a silly block of cheese. But sometimes you say, I wonder if I can do it, and then you try it. So I'll post that pretty soon. So my little mouse, can I carry this any further? Do you think I can take this idea now and just go further and further and further?
You gotta have practice with the cheese.
And so I was thinking something like this. And this guy's hanging out for dear life. He says, so you can see, you can go further and further and further. So you've got this little guy standing here, and he's standing here, and he's holding on to the stem of the goblet.
Away from the cheese and onto the wine.
But you can see it never ends. You got two little mice dancing in a martini. You see, so it goes on and on. So I've got a little scrapbook I keep, and some of these ideas are kind of funny. One might be, I need to make a multi-axis mouse so that this guy is here, and he's standing up. So you can see, it just keeps going and going and going. It feeds itself. So if you start thinking that way, you can never run out of ideas.
You know, when you slanted low stopper, you could also have a saying that if that stopper straightens up, you've drank too much.
That's the whole idea. When you've got one of these, when they begin to look straight, it's time to quit drinking. So that's exactly the... Now I put my little cherry somewhere. Here we go. So what I do now is I set this here, and I glue it in place at a slight angle. And so we've got a martini glass with a cherry in it. So I've turned olives, I've turned, I can't remember which one I've turned, lemon wedges, that sort of thing. And I turned a black olive out of ebony with a pink ivory pimento. My daughter says, Dad, they don't put black olives in a martini. So I had to make one out of Bradford pear maple and airbrush it green, olive green, to make her happy. So it just keeps going on and on. So there's a basic little bottle stopper. So I'm going to glue this in, and we'll put the bottle stopper on it, and you guys can use that as to donate or have a little auction on it later.
And how does your daughter know so much about martini?
That's the question I asked her too. But it's amazing. These scrap blocks of wood, just glue a piece of wood on it. So pieces of wood you think are unusable, you can just directly glue it in. While I'm on that subject of holding a piece of wood, there's always a way to hold a piece of wood on the lathe. One way or another is a way to figure it out. This is a very simple way if you want to turn finials, but your stock is too small to get in the chuck. I make lots of these. A piece of scrap wood, I drill a hole in it, I put my finial material in it, and I glue it in. And so now we've got a lot of purchase on this thing, and yet I can turn a fine, delicate finial. I'll pass that around too. So, nothing to it.
Oh, that's worth the price of it.
Now you're saying that the rod sticking out of it, that the piece would be turning.
Yeah, the long piece, yeah. There's a piece in the back that sticks in the back, but that doesn't matter.
It's just a tenon you turn.
Yeah, that's the tenon was a little bit too long. It just sticks out the other end. And I imagine a lot of you guys do that already, but for those who don't, it might come in handy for figuring out a way to hold a piece of wood and you don't have the real small set of jaws. And sometimes those small jaws don't hold anyway. You notice that? You put it in there and it keeps slipping and slipping because they're not serrated. So now, we'll start with a new project. When I turn at home, before I start my serious turning, I do a little practice. Do we have any musicians here? Anybody? We're in South Carolina. It's got to be a banjo player here. It's got to be. But musicians practice. Even if they've got 50 years experience, every day they practice their scales. They practice, just to stay basically in tune, I guess you would say. And I like to do the same thing. Before I turn something, I'll go turn a practice piece just to stay sharp. And I turn bottle stopper, little martini glasses or goblets or finials, something, just to get myself warmed up before I get going. So I've turned lots of finials, lots of goblets. And right now I'm going to turn a finial. And my reason is, I want to show the techniques I use, but more important, and I should say more importantly, I want to Do two things. See if I can spell. I talk about technique and I talk about design because they go together. You may have the best technique in the world, but poor design skills. And so you're constantly struggling. Your technique gets better and better, but your design skills stay set, and so you become kind of locked, you get frustrated. And I'm going to talk about some ideas today, such as the golden rectangle. And I'm going to approximate the size of it. And it's basically 1.618 to 1 ratio. And what you've done is you've taken a cube and you've made another piece out of that cube to give you this approximate size. And it's a good gauge for proportion. I showed yesterday how I used it to come up with my spiral pieces. I just took a shape like this, like this, like this. And I used that golden rectangle to give me a pretty good proportion of how I wanted that piece to look. And say I'm going to turn a bowl, and I know all about this golden rectangle, so I turn a bowl that looks like this. But I refer to that as a perfectly proportioned dog dish because even though you've got all the proportions right, there's no real style to it. So I want to talk about style and things more than just abstract shapes. So a finial would be a really good starting point for that. So that's the whole idea behind this. I'll show you my techniques and then some of the design ideas I use when I turn a finial.
We have about 5 to 10 minutes before break time, so just so you know.
Very good. So we're going to rough this out and then put it in a chuck. This is a piece of yellow heart, if I didn't mention that. Looks like my fluoride moved a little bit. Whenever you hear a funny noise, time to stop and see what happens. And you see I'm using my whole body to make this cut. You see that? I'm just moving my legs or my feet, using the tool rest to guide the tool and get a nice, uniform, even cut. That makes your life a whole lot easier if you're having trouble with tool control. And again, I can just use my hand to manipulate my depth, use my whole body motions, big motions to control the depth of my cut. Now we're going to mount this in the chuck. This time, I'll be a little more careful on my shoulders here. I'm just using a straight in cut. My ankle's off a little bit. I just want a nice square shoulder.
Do you prefer the dovetail or the serrated?
This particular chuck, the question is, do I prefer a dovetail? To me, it doesn't matter that much, as long as the jaws are in really good shape. And I've got both the straight jaws and the dovetail jaws, and I don't know for sure which one holds better. But I like this little one-way tool here, lifes the spur center, because I need my chuck here, take it in and out. So for demo purposes, it works really well. So now I want to really put some good pressure on here to really get the jaws nice and located in my chuck. How many people here turn finials? So we've got a few. This is spindle work. And to me, a finial is the epitome of spindle turning. It's the finest kind of work you can do. And I really like turning these things. Even though I turn a lot of things that are off the wall, I still like the traditional shapes and the traditional beads and coves that you find in this kind of work. Now, I'm going to sharpen my tool real quick. And I've showed you the fingernail grind I use. It's way swept back, so you can see how I hollowed that martini glass. I hollow all sorts of things. Yesterday we hollowed this out with a spindle gouge. I didn't do the best job in the world on it this time, but usually I can hollow pretty well all the way down through. And I'll show you my sharpening process real quickly. I'm just going to set it in this one-way jig, approximate my angle, check and see if my angle's correct. Once I get it set, I roll around the tool, get the shape I want, come back on the other side. You can do it with one motion, side to side. But I think most people find it easier to work on one side than the other. Doesn't take a heavy touch. Usually one pass all the way around. If this setup's set here, just commit, zip, zip, and it's done. So it's fairly easy to use, and I find that it's very repeatable. I also now remove this bottom of my bevel. I'm going to put a radius here. I'm just going to freehand that, because sometimes...
What angle is this?
Yeah, it's
This one here.
Oh, it's on 1, 2, 3.5 from the top. And I never move it. I scribe the line so that I don't accidentally move it. And it gives me, between the depth of the tool in this fixture and the angle and how far back I go, creates this grind that's swept way back. It also, looking down on it, which is very important, you can see that it curves inward. You see that? It actually comes up and around. So as that tool approaches the wheel, it rolls inward. It comes on this side, it rolls inward. That gives me an edge that doesn't tend to catch. If that edge came out at an angle like this and stayed that way, I'd have a tool that was really, really hard to control. So sometimes on your swept back gouges, it tends to catch. You don't know why. Check and look straight down on it. Look at the flute and see if you can see those edges curling back in. If you can't, that's your problem. So just before break, we got a minute yet?
Yeah, I mean, we're flexible.
We'll round this off. Remove the tailstock. Anybody know what Turner's elbow is?
Hit them a couple times.
Boy, I've done it enough times you think I know better. But now, I've got this piece held in a chuck with no support on this end. So to me, that's the important part, because now it lets me work on the point and all the shapes without the tailstock in my way, number one. And number two, when you put this here and you put pressure, you're putting stress on that piece of wood. So it wants to do this, wants to buckle on you. The thinner it gets, the more it starts to get that chatter. And so I work without it at all. So we just sharpened this tool up and we'll see how it cuts now. And we'll start this a little bit and I think we'll take our break. Again, this is spindle work, so we always start large diameter down to small. I'm at 1200 RPM. This must be on a lower belt speed. I usually spin a little bit higher than that. Now, I mentioned before I turn on a fairly low tool rest. And one reason I do that, I can turn from large diameter to small with no kind of contortions. In other words, if I had my tool rest up high and I wanted to turn down here, I'd have to roll the tool over. And as I went down further, I'd have to raise my handle. So I've got a lot of motions going on that make it a little harder to do. This way, I start here, my flute is away from the cut, I touch it, form a small groove. Once I get that groove started, I just let it feed in. There's a straight line from a large diameter all the way down to a small diameter. I'm riding the bevel all the way. It lets me focus now, instead of worrying about all those different moves I've got to make. I can look at my shape. I'm going to look at the far side, the horizon. I don't think about catches, and I just cut. I can look up here and make a cut. Just watch it up here. Because I know I'm not going to get a catch. And I discovered this during one demo. I can actually look at the camera and do the cuts. So that's one thing I learned from doing demos. You can watch a different point through your turning and it still works. If you're not thinking about the tool, you know it's not going to get a catch. So now you're free to look at the horizon, to look up here, and do these different cuts with it. So I can take the same cut and I can actually begin here. Now you see my body motion. As I move my body, I've created a bead shape, half of a bead. Half I had to move my tool rest, half I had to change my tool position. And so it's a nice, to me, a nice technique to have. I don't constantly have to raise or lower my tool rest. And it also gives me the freedom, if I want to start higher up in my bevel rubbing here, I can touch, I can cut, and I can still just roll over and roll a bead in the traditional way. It gives me the freedom to work high on the piece, work low on the piece, and never have to fiddle with my tool rest height. So that's a very nice advantage of using a low tool rest. And before we break, a lot of turners say they like to turn with their flute always up. But by rotating it, if we're a wood carver, we carve this way with the flute up, right? Right against a piece of wood like this. So if we were to make a cut, we start the cut and we just cut away with it. And what I'm doing with the turning tools is the same thing. I want to cut, I'm just leave my tool 90 degrees to the surface and I cut this way. You see, I'm really doing the same thing. If I was going to carve this out, I wouldn't carve this way, I would carve this way. So it's really, in a sense, the same thing. So I'm thinking in terms of being a carver when I do my turning. I'm just carving it as it's spinning. So, everybody ready for a break? Okay. Before I keep going, I'll take a quick break. And if anybody has any questions,
Now it's time.
Now I need a little glue to put the cherry in my stopper. I think this will do it. So I'm going to glue that in and put it aside, let it dry. And now we're going to go back to our Finial. Now I've mentioned a couple times, and even during the critique, when I turn this Finial, who thinks I have an idea in mind of what I want to turn? Anybody? Am I just going to wing it, or have I got a pretty good idea?
Pretty good idea.
Okay, I'll wing it. Well, we're going to take just the tip of this Finial, and we're going to draw a golden rectangle approximately. We're going to divide it in half, and we're going to make a little, see if we can draw a flame that's attractive. I'll try to draw it the best I can freehand. We draw this little Finial tip. And so I've got good proportion of height to width. You see my biggest part falls right here at approximately a third of the height of the entire piece. And that's called emphasis. See if I can spell that correctly. So that's my emphasis point right here. And that works on almost every turning we do, whether it's a bowl, whether it's a hollow form. If we turn a hollow form, we can make our emphasis point somewhere here or here. So instead of being perfectly balanced like a sphere, no matter which way you turn it, it's at rest, it's equalized, it's reached a sense of equilibrium and nothing's happening. And so what I try to do is tweak things a little bit, give it a point of interest that draws your eye. The other thing I do on my Finials is I have a larger diameter and a small diameter. I may have a collar under this, and I go down to a real fine stem. So the difference between this and this creates visual interest. And I'm trying to come up with a sense of, say, dynamic, and here we said. I want a dynamic quality to my piece, and the opposite would be static. A static piece just sits there and does nothing, where a dynamic piece looks like it's moving even when it's not. And that's a concept. Have you ever seen a 57 Chevy with those fins? It looks like it's fast, it's just sitting there. They knew all about that sort of thing. Make it look fast, you would buy it. You'd make it look exciting. And it's just sitting there next to this checker cab. The checker cab looks like a box, and you get these cars with all the fins. And they were trying to feed off the thing at the time with jet engines and rockets. You had the old rocket 88 engine, that sort of thing. Trying to make you think of how fast their cars were. So they used that to try to sell cars. I can use the same thing on my turnings. I want to create visual interest. And that's what I'm trying to do on every piece I do. I want something happening. Like the spiral pieces we did yesterday, it looks like it's unfolding. It looks like there's some lift to it. Things are happening, and that catches your attention. So if you can kind of put this sort of thought into your turnings, and you can do it intentionally, every time you make a turning, you think, is this piece a dynamic piece or is it static? The bowl I mentioned in the back, the base was a little too big. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's not a criticism, but when that ball comes down with a big foot like this, and it's got a little detail which I liked, you can compare it with what would happen if we reduced the size of that foot to here. Now, the whole side of your bowl can come down and undercut and tuck in. And you can see a more rounder shape, you see that? So when it's done, the same bull with the smaller foot has much more visual interest than the one with the big foot. And it just takes making that base smaller to add a sense of lift. That little tiny detail changes the whole composition of that piece. And it makes a dramatic difference. Before I get carried away with this, I want to go back on my Finial. I did a piece that looked like this, and it was a little fish chasing a fish, chasing a fish. Has anybody seen that one?
That's Howard in the big crayon.
And it's sitting on a little whirlpool of water, and one fish chasing the next. And the idea is it has a sense of motion. It looks like it's always moving. And I left the last guy's tail here, and he's almost got his tail in his mouth. And it's that sense of tension that something is going to happen, and it creates another whole feeling. And so every piece I make, I try to get a sense of tension, that something's moving and something's going to happen. So it looks like this guy is going to meet his match too in just a second. And so you can make another sense of motion and tension by simply doing this. Make him look backwards. See that little detail? You can see now he's got a worried look on his face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you could have put that on the world because it's the story of the world. Bigger fish eating a bigger fish. Bigger
Right.
fish, dog eat dog kind of thing.
Exactly. See, so you're thinking maybe I'll give you an idea of how to make something that piqued your interest. I could carry this idea to all sort of different things. And people ask, where did you get this idea from? How on earth did you come up with that? And this was another successful piece for me that ended up on a TV show. I've made these things worldwide. It's on permanent public display in Hong Kong. It's like, this is unbelievable. And it started out, I was on my lathe, and my grandson was just born. Does anybody know what this is?
That's a bobber, ain't it?
Yeah, fishing lure.
A fishing lure. And so I'm a fisherman. I was making this, and he's going to get a rubber skirt, and I took another one. And so instead of making one, I made a whole bunch of them in a row. So I made this one, and I made this one. And I was looking at it, and I was going to get little eyes, and I said, oh, wait a minute. This is funny. Oh, it's just a little spark that there you saw something. If I made them in a circle, there we go. So before I get going, a funny story. I was accepted, my work was accepted in the Del Monte Gallery out in California, a very prestigious gallery. And I always believe you've got to turn what really interests you. You know, something that really is got you excited. You want to get up in the middle of the lake and go work on your lathe, and you know you're into something real good. So I turned the circle of fish, and I sent it to the Del Monte Gallery as part of an exhibit. And then Ray Lear calls me. He says, did you get pictures of your pieces for the show? I said, no, I was running late. I put them in a box. I sent them off. He said, I need pictures. I said, I don't have them. I said, you'll have them in 2 days. Don't worry about it. It's all good, and you'll have to take the pictures. So he says to me, why did you turn? I said, I can't tell you. I said, uh-oh. I was excited about it then, but I'm not excited now, because what if he doesn't like these fish things I did? One was a circle of fish. One was something that looked like this. I turned a hollow form, and I did this.
Okay. And a bird fish, huh?
So I've got a fish eating a fish. He's coming out of the water, and I called it bottoms up. And this is the box. So I sent this one and a couple other fish, all fish. And so now I'm starting to doubt myself. It's, oh no. What if he doesn't like these things? I'm dead. My wood-turning career is over. So I get a call about 2 days later, and it's right there. He says, Keith, you and I have a problem. I knew it. He says, listen, we had opening last night, the opening ceremony. I sold your circle of fish to 2 different people. I needed another one immediately. And I'm like, oh. And it turned out to be a very popular piece. And so I've turned, I think, 15 or 16 of those circle of fish to various collectors across the country and overseas. And you have no idea that's going to happen with a piece. It's just one of those things that kind of took off. It must have caught somebody's attention. But sometimes that's what can happen when you put yourself into your work, use your own life experiences in your work, and I think we can all do that. Sometimes we don't even think of that part of turning, but we can all do it. So I want to get back to my little finial now. When I make the tip for my finial, I want to be thinking in terms of that golden rectangle and how that would work on the tip of this finial. You can see I'm starting from air to wood, air to wood. That's a cut that I like. Technically something most people say, well, you really shouldn't be doing that. But I like it. Sometimes it's the only way you can come up with a cut that you really want to do. So with a little practice, I think anybody can do it. I'm using right now a 1/2-inch spindle gouge. So you can see I don't need micro miniature tools to do this. You see that okay?
No, I gotta get it in focus.
I'll wait one minute so we can look at better focus on it. There we go. Now
That's
it's
about
very
as good as we can get.
difficult for me to reach in here with that spindle gouge and get the fine detail I want. So now I take my scoop chisel and I work with the long point to just refine the shape of this tip. And it's funny that the tool that everybody's afraid to use in this position becomes very, very manageable. You can actually right at the side of that bevel. You really have a lot of control over that cut. So I've done a lot of finial classes and a lot of people, I can never turn that thin and that fine, but everybody does. And it's a matter of, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you probably won't even try. So, with practice,
It's small.
and I always work from the end and work my way toward the headstock. That way I have a lot of mass to work with. The nice thing about this method of turning, if I slip, you see what happens? I just slip in the air. I don't get a catch, I just lose my cut. I pop out of the cut and I go into air. So that's a nice advantage of having that low program. Now it becomes important for me to have that fine control. Not so important on a bigger object. You know, my hand is doing all the work. I tighten my hand, I relax, I go back a bit, relax my grip and let that tool feed. Now I make a fist and I draw the tool towards me just by technique my fist. Now, if I try to turn like this with just my arms, I can't do it. But if I brace the tool here, have good control with this hand, all of a sudden I've got tremendous control. My arms against the tool rest, so I can brace here, I can brace my arm, and I can really get a lot of control that way. And it's pretty amazing how small you can actually turn these things. This is a piece of yellow heart. It's not the most ideal piece of wood for turning a finial, but it's not so bad. I get this cut. I can't go back. So if I'm not happy with it, now's the time to fix it. In fact, if we're going to sand it, now would be the time to sand that as well. Now this piece we'll use for being raffled off later as well, I think, so I'll finish it a little bit. We'll do a little bit of sanding. Now when I turn a finial, I try to avoid any straight lines. And that's something we discussed yesterday. Straight lines kind of kill a form, so I try to avoid them as much as possible. So even though my stem can be long and thin, I still want a slight curve to it. What I'm doing, I'm riding that bevel right along this piece. And you'll notice I have my flute at an angle. I'm shearing the wood away. I'm not approaching the wood with my bevel straight up. What would happen if I did that? The wood would try to climb over my cutting edge and start to do one of these. So by holding the wood down with my bevel, you see it's pretty flexible. I hardly touch it, it starts to move. So I can't really go back and touch it once I've done that. Not very much anyway. So I don't want this piece of wood to climb over my tool. It'll snap instantly. So we'll sand this a little bit. Now if we wanted to get this a little more uniform, could we take our skew chisel and plane along this and really get a nice clean cut with it? So what we do is reach behind it with our hand and plane along this with our skew chisel. Support that finer cut with your hand, using my body on the back side to hold this end of the skew chisel, adjust my thumb here, support this with my other finger, and straighten the diameter of that out a little bit. So again, the skew, which you think is kind of deadly sometimes, becomes a very nice tool to use on your smaller diameters. Some turners use a little round skew chisel. I haven't tried that yet, but they say it works really well.
What do you think about that hardwood, mini life set?
as far as the mini life center, somebody asked.
Only the very tip of the Finial.
Don't need it. That was a article by a member of the Catskill Woodturners, who turns quite a few finials. He actually learned to turn finials from Steve Sherman, another local turner, and myself. He used to go to my classes how to turn a finial. I call it the art of the finial. So he put his own little twist in that using the live center, which I don't see a need for. I don't see a need to have it. So we'll work on the shape of this, and in a minute we're going to form the vault shape. Some people call it an onion. And I think right about here is good. I always just follow my flute. Whatever direction you put it, the tool will follow. So if I want a beat groove, I put my bevel in a 45 to the wood, just follow it in. And all this bolt shape really is a giant bead. It's cut the same way as a bead. I could cut a Christmas ornament the same way. Always working from the big to the small. In my head, I know pretty much what diameter I want this to be. I had a block of yellow heart, 8/4 thick, probably 7 or 8 feet long. It's almost all gone. I used it all to turn demo finials. So that's a whole lot of finials out of the yellow heart.
What are the ideal woods to use?
The question, what are the ideal woods to use? I find my favorite wood of all is blackwood, African blackwood, ebony, which is a little more brittle. But those two make the best. Rosewood, tocobolo, anything that's hard. And the other important thing is you want a nice straight grained piece of wood. If the wood is angled, if the grain is angled, it's going to break. It's going to snap off on you. And here where the grain starts to move this out of the way. I want to support this with my hand and come into the tool. This is a skew chisel as well, but it's something I came up with. It's a little bit different design. The idea is it's got the bevel only on one side. I'm going to sand it out a little bit and continue with the rest.
But that is a chisel shape like a real chisel.
I call it a V skew. I can pass it around. It's got the cutting edges on the same side. And so you don't have the tendency for that one grind to pull the other grind into the cut. And I find some turners find it a little bit easier to use. smaller gouge, I can feel, even though I just sharpened this one, it's a little bit dull. So I'm gonna switch, and by having the same grind, I go from one tool to the other, and I don't have to think about how it's going to behave. I know it's going to behave the same way my other tool did. So it's nice that you have a consistency in your grinds. There's nothing worse than going to the grinder. You come back and the tool behaves completely differently than it did before you went to the grinder. You get a catch and you wonder what happened. Now there's one more thing with turning that I like to emphasize, and that is the importance of varying the diameters of the turning along the length of the turning. It creates a dramatic effect. There's a contrast between the large diameter and the small that's very important. I'm going to finesse with this sheet just a little bit. So I'm going to take advantage of my large bulb here, and I'm going to have a cove beneath it that's very small and delicate. And it's going to create a pedestal for the rest of it. I haven't had to change my tool rest height at all. You notice that I turned the whole piece and never had to fiddle with the height of the tool rest at all. How many people here have thought about their turnings in terms of masculine or feminine? Anybody?
Mine's kind of thin.
But people wonder, what on earth is this guy talking about? When we think of something as masculine, we think strong, you know, like this. Big, sturdy, blocky. We think of feminine in terms of delicate, dainty, smaller diameter, different curves. So can we think of a turning in those terms? And that's something I like to do. And I'll elaborate on that in a minute. And I'm trying to size my foot here to match the rest of the finial. Sometimes the size of this cove makes a big difference with the overall appearance. I'm doing nothing here but a traditional cove cut. I'm going to take a break for 1 second. I'm going to make a table. Like I used to be in the furniture end of woodworking. And I'm going to make 2 legs. This one, big and blocky. This one, let's see if I can make a nice job of this. Curves out, comes around, and ends up in a foot.
Queen Anne.
Right, more like a Queen Anne sort of leg with a ball and claw foot on it.
Line ball.
And then we put a nice little shape in here. We made carved in the area, but you can see this has nice curves, graceful, where this one's big and blocky. Which one would you call more feminine than the other? There's no question this one. Thomas Chippendale was famous for his furniture that featured this Queen Anne leg and the ball and claw foot, and he took Chinese influences, and he deliberately took that big heavy Gothic stuff and he lightened it up and made it more feminine. So in his writings he talked about that. So that's been a principle they've known about for a long, long time. Making your work look a little more feminine. Makes it lighter, makes it much more exquisite looking. And so instead of a big blocky turning, we'll have a more delicate looking turning. This piece of wood, as I turned it, released some of the tension in the wood and it's starting to wobble. Even though this was kiln dried as well, there were some stresses in the wood.
Could you show the edge of that skew?
Yeah, we can pass that around.
I'll just take a film of it.
Where did I put it?
Keith,
I'll lay it up.
sandpaper?
There we go. So what I did here is I ground a bevel on one side and a bevel on the other,
It's flat on top.
flat on top. How I came up with this design is, I wondered how a skew would work with just one bevel, only on the bottom. I've got a skew chisel with one bevel. So I go on the lathe and I use it and it doesn't catch at all. But it only goes one direction. So either I've got to make two tools or grind another bevel on the other side. And that's what I did and it works. I go right and left and I still have a point. So that was the idea behind that tool. So now I want to work on this area here. I'm going to take my skew chisel, I'm going to ride it straight in and make a fine line between where the bulbous part of my finial is and where it meets the cove. And in between the two I have a little fillet, which is important. That fillet kind of separates things because each element within the finial has a definite shape. So it defines the piece a little bit more. This is where I want my finial to be very delicate. It creates a little dramatic effect of holding the rest of it up with a smaller diameter piece. And it really does add to the effect of how that finial is perceived by somebody. I like that, that's fine. We'll sand this a little bit and we're almost done with this. We'll move on to the next project. And I'm not going to get carried away with the sand and I just want to...
Do you ever put finish on them afterwards?
Pardon?
Do you finish them with wax, lacquer, or oil, or anything?
Yeah, my finished piece that I'll usually finish, and the question was, do I ever finish these? And I do. I use a lot of oil finishes. I used to be primarily lacquer, and I've switched over to more oil-based finishes, some tongue oils, and a mixture of polyurethane and tongue oil that I mix myself. But the object here is we want no torn grain, and when I get down to the details here, I don't even sand down there. I want it so clean that there's no meat to sand. If you can do that, number one, it speeds up the process. You end up with a piece that is finished very nicely with no torn grain sticking out. So the overall effect is very nice. Got a little tear out here, which I didn't expect. And we'll fix that and we'll go ahead with the rest of it. You can see it's starting to chatter now, so I've got no support underneath. So that's why I normally keep a lot of material under here to work with. Now my support for the finial, I've angled it. And just that little bit of an angle adds to the visual interest. It's like the bullet just sits there on top of a table, just anchors itself. I want a little bit of something to set this off from the surface it sits on. Now I can take my spindle gouge with that long edge and refine the base of my finial. So I've undercut it, want a nice clean cut. You can see how much this piece of wood moved. You can see why I can't go back. Even though this was kiln dried, it had a lot of stresses in this piece of wood. And as I released the tension, that's why it's starting to wobble. Got a little spot in here that I don't like. And if you have confidence in your tool control, you know it's not going to catch, it makes it a whole lot easier to come back and touch up a spot you weren't happy with. So now we're going to part the saw, and we'll be all done with it. I think I have a volunteer who wants to catch it.
I can go. If you need a call, I can do it.
So we've parted our finial off. It's got a little tenon to hold it to where we want it to go. And we'll pass that around. It's not perfect. I like to do a self-critique before I hand this off. I look at my pieces, I might put them on a shelf and say, what do I like, what do I not like about a piece? And then I go back and refine it, constantly trying to improve. So I think it's a helpful technique to work and work and work toward
When you
a higher
judge
goal.
the length of the finial proportionally to the rest of the object,
And that's a really,
base or bowl or
really good question is, how do you judge the length of your finial to what it sits on? So if I have a hollow form here, how tall will I make my finial? And I've experimented with that and tried to come up with some kind of definitive answer. And what I do is I'll make a drawing of that turning, and then I'll work with it. I want it to flow up. I don't want it to look like it's sitting on top, just doing nothing. I want that shape to flow through, and then work upward, 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 and have that little tip on the top. And then I'll actually draw it out to see how it looks. And then I'll make it that height. What we can do is take some scrap pieces of wood and work with it and make some practice finials and see which one looks the best. I may make 3, 4, or 5 finials if I decide, oh, I like that one. And then I'll use it. Sometimes we can mimic the shape of the hollow form right in the finial itself. I think somebody saw one that I did with a glass bead in the center. So we can have a bead shape here that comes up to another part, little cove underneath. So a whole little bit different finial that would all fit together and make it all work as a design. Not a very good drawing, but the design opportunities for a finial are pretty much unlimited. Any questions before I move on?
Got one of them.
When you started, at what point did you decide what you wanted it to look like?
About 2 weeks ago. But when I start my demo, do I want to make, what do I want to do during a demo? If I do a finial, this is my basic finial, so that's what I turned. So I had an idea in my head what I wanted to look like, definitely before I ever turned it.
So this is your basic finial?
Yes.
How many elements are there here?
There's the tip. The question is how many elements within that finial? That's a really good question because we want to keep it as simple as we can. We have basically a big onion shape here is one. It's got a stem, so I kind of figured that's one shape. I've got a giant piece of molasses that's dripping down and formed a blob at the end, just like it's moving. So that's what I want. I've got a cove underneath. There's 2. And I've got a little fillet here with another. So I have 1, 2, really 3. And I try to keep it simple. I try to keep it as simple as I can. Sometimes
Does it matter whether it's odd numbers or even numbers?
I like odd numbers. Like, I've turned some really, really crazy finials. I did a piece like this on a hollow form with a collar, and I did this. I put little ebony balls on top. And what it was, it's guitar strings and little ebony spheres.
Didn't you have that night at the symposium in North Carolina?
I don't think so.
I got pictures of you from your different videos that you had there.
Okay, I don't think I did. That has been sold for several years now.
Okay.
But I named it hollow form in G.
It must have been a picture or something.
Yeah, there might have been a picture of it. I may have used it as part of my demonstration. Guitar strings and music notes. So I play guitar, not very well, but I still try. I still practice. We don't want to go there. Anyway, I'm a better turner than I'm a guitar player. Let's put it that way. So there's my hollow form in G. I should have made a B flat, but I'd be a much highly educated wood turner, but or a musician. But it's the music coming out of the hollow form on guitar strings, and so that's another successful piece for me. It takes something of my own life again and applies it to my work. So you can see that theme repeated over and over and over again. And everybody has things that they're interested in, and just put it in your work. It's as simple as that. So how many have ever thought of taking little anecdotal pieces of things and put it in your work? Anybody ever do that yet? And you'll find out that sometimes it's humorous, sometimes it's funny, your sense of humor comes out. I turned my circle of fish and somebody came up to me and said, boy, you have a real understanding of human nature. And I said, yes, I do, thank you. I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. I was just making a circle of fish because I thought it was funny.
I've been trying to figure out Michael Rapkins for a long time.
You do good, Mike.
Another person said to me, it's really good to see you're in touch with your feminine side. And I was thinking about it, I said, I think, thank you. I don't know what you meant by that, I don't really want to know. But,
Let it stay in the closet.
what's that?
Let it stay in the closet.
Yeah, there you go.
You understand your market.
Yeah, I understand my market, that's it. So let's do another piece. I have two options now. I can turn something like we did yesterday, show how I turned a winged piece. Now I can mount a piece of wood. How much time do we have?
About 45 minutes to.
All right. I can put a piece of wood unlaid this way,
Now,
or I can put a piece of wood unlaid this way. Which way do you want to see me do?
Yesterday's.
This way?
No. The one you did yesterday.
Okay, yesterday?
what comes out of that other one?
We're not
The
sure.
airplane plan.
And it's funny. One more detour, and that's hopefully the last one.
What about this square boat?
Well, that's where I'm going. I was doing a bowl turning class at Brookfield Craft Center. They unfortunately ran out of funding. The state used to give them quite a bit of money to keep them afloat, and they lost their funding, and they're in business, they're out of business, they're in business, out of business. But I was teaching a bowl class, and one of the gentlemen in the class said, well, you've got all these signature pieces. We're bowl turners. How could we turn this signature bowl? I thought about it for a minute. I said, well, if I were to try to turn a signature bowl, maybe I do something like this. I make a bowl like this, and then maybe I'd put wings on it like that, and I'd carve it, and then maybe I'd do something like this, and I'd carve that out, and then put a bowl under it, and something like that. That might be a signature bowl. And so I'm looking at it. What if I turned a black bead around it, then I gold leaf the inside? That'd be kind of nice. And the more I looked at it all day long, I'm starting to like this idea. So I went home, and I took a block of wood like this. I turned a bowl in the center, and then I turned a wing like this, and then I turned a wing like this, and I carved it, and I did that. And I made a wing bowl with nice carved linen fold wings. I've got some kind of attraction to fabric that I don't know why. Fabric is a repeating theme in my work. And if you look at my website, you're going to see pieces with linen fold and folded wings. I don't know where that comes from. I really don't know. I know
Your feminine side.
my feminine side, that's it.
Have you ever done a calla linen with that design?
I haven't yet, but I can. I've thought about it, and I've seen somebody else do something similar carved, so I try to keep my own. I've done roses, I've done all sorts of different shapes. I have not done the calla lily. But I'm going to put this back in the lathe now, get another tenon on here, and we'll make one of the forms like I did yesterday.
Well, they can't see this. They didn't come to class.
Wow.
So you started off with a solid block of wood.
Yep, just like that. It's funny, when I turned my fish eyes, I did a circle of fish, and I've done several since. I've done a fish on a necklace with a skeleton, and I've done a little mouse eyes. And you go, how do you measure something that small? I said, well, you got to measure them by eye.
Yeah.
That was a joke.
About that big.
I can't give up my day job, huh? I'll stick to turning. So we're going to form a small tenon. Like I said, if there's nothing else the skew chisel's good for, it's good for turning the tenon. just a peeling cut, very simple to do. Now, I put the 10 on this end because I'm not so close to the chuck just in case I slip, so just a little extra safety factor there just in case. This is a piece of cherry. By the way, my wife loves my turnings. She found this really nice maple burl. She said, would you make me something out of that? I said, okay. I said to myself, she asked for it. So when I gave it back to her, she said, you ruined my piece of wood. So I have my critics. I said, well, you should have asked me first what you wanted. Now I like to go with the chuck, one side in the other, to make sure I've got it seated well. And now we're going to shape this a little bit. I want to guesstimate the length I want to work with. And like I said, I work at a men's maximum security prison, so that's a macho thing. The guys really appreciate that. It really strikes fear in their heart when they see me do this. I hope.
I guess y'all inventory your tubes pretty good, right?
What's that?
You inventory your tubes pretty good, right?
Oh yeah, 3 times a day. Now you can see how rough this end grain is. It's really, really torn up.
That's what you came with. There it is.
You see that? And so, a lot of times we make cuts with a parting tool and spindle works. We wonder when we put a finish on it why it looks awful. You've got that dark spots all over the place. It's from, we've torn grain from way down inside a piece of wood. So we're going to clean that up. So get it started. See, I'm slightly above center. You see what happens? It's trying to skate back on me. I'm up a little high, you see that? If I lower my torus just a little bit, so I'm dead center, that skating should go away. It should go straight in. So if you're trying this cut and skating on you, lower your tool rest. Now I'm going to begin to taper this thing. I haven't used my bowl gouge yet, so we'll use that. It's funny, you can make the same cuts with the bowl gouge as you can with the tool gouge. Sometimes it's just good practice. Try your bowl gouge for something you never did with a piece of wood. trim, and just touch it. Just like that, get a groove started, then you can just follow it right in. It's the same technique I use on my spindle gouges, so a lot of times you use the same cuts no matter which tool you're using. So I can work on trying to get some fine control with my bowl gouge as well on a little practice spindle piece. Now the tool that we think of as a pain in the neck to work with, or skew chisel, becomes very nice now to try to flatten this surface out. I'm just doing a planing cut with it. Want a nice straight line. As people found out yesterday, that the straighter the lines we have, the better the piece will turn out. Now that's pretty straight. Not bad. Now, we want our spindle gouge now to be as sharp as possible. So, I'm going to go back to the grinder because I could feel it was not as sharp as it should have been and I stopped using it. And that's an important consideration. When the tool's dull, don't keep going. Stop and sharpen. And sometimes people dread that because, oh man, it was cut good. I hate to sharpen it and it won't cut good anymore. Anybody ever do that? I never did. But we've all been through that. There's always that learning curve that, now this should be the same position that it was. So now it's a matter of simply going one side, then the other, and I'm done. And that's all there is to it. So if you think you've got to stand at the grinder for 45 minutes, it's just not true. So we've chewed up our end grain, we've got this fairly straight, and let's get this out of our way.
You push down real hard till the grindstone explodes, right?
Yes, that was yesterday's story, and I saw somebody do that. Then in another class, the same person grabbed a tool and was grinding, and you hear that when that grinder starts to bog down, you say, oh no, I'm glad that's not my tool. Well, it was.
They were sharpening your tools, huh?
Yeah, I wish I could give him 25 to life for that one.
I had to tell them, look, bro, you don't do that.
No.
My tools, you sharpen your tools.
Yeah.
My tools.
It's hard to do sometimes when you're loaning your tools out in class.
Yeah, it's
Let them know.
and you know there's a problem when you've got a brand new turner with brand new tools and they're only this long.
Spends more time sharpening than it does turning.
Yep. So now I'm going to start with end grain. And I'm going to form a divot here. I'm just going to pull that tool forward with it. And I'm going to use this tool like a drill. Now, can you see the angle that that tool is at? My flute is kind of facing, and I'm cutting with an edge, and I'm just riding along it. If I open it up and put that flute straight up, it's going to hit the side of this and tend to catch. Bang! That's the end of it. So I roll it over a little bit. It can be done. But boy, you've got to be real careful. But for hollowing out a small box, this is ideal. A minute and the whole thing is hollowed already.
Part of that feature is, you like to bring your wings back to the first.
Yes, and part of, now you see why I grind my wings way back. It lets me hollow with it. See, I'm cutting with that whole entire wing. Yesterday we used a drill to drill through. Today I'm just using the tool, just brute force.
The guys at the pin would be impressed.
What's that?
The guys at the pin would be impressed.
They would be impressed. I'd have an arm wrestling contest with them.
They would say,
By the way, we've done that. Not supposed to. We had my shop against another shop. We had arm wrestling championship. It was fun. My guy won. But he could bench press this lady easily. I don't know if the arm wrestling contest was legal, but I know the gambling they were doing was definitely not legal. Now, let's see how deep I am. So we're right here. So that didn't take very long to get that hollow. Let's clean it up a little bit. One thing I didn't show yesterday, you can actually take a skew chisel, come up to the angle, same angle all the way down through and level your wall out. So today was a bonus, you can do that. Just ride that edge of the tool, get the same angle, and just ride right down the same angle until you start to get a lot of chatter. Now your wall thickness is pretty uniform. So you can see why I didn't really want to open that can with it and break the tip of my chisel off this morning. So now, we want to cut this apart. And you're going to say you took all that time and did a nice turning and now you're going to cut it apart.
What's your wall thickness?
3/16. I'll bet you $5 it's 3/16.
I don't have a rule with me today.
Before I hollow, let me get rid of some excess material first before I hollow it. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Now I see how you're gonna do the calla lily.
Pardon?
I can see how you're gonna
Oh
do
yeah,
the
it's simple. And if you have an interest in turning a calla lily, this may inspire you. That's what I want to do.
I have a friend that loves them and she'll go wild over it. A
So-
lot of people do them.
If I can show you a technique that you can use and take it your direction, I did my job. That's what I want to do. I don't want to say, look how good of a turner I am, look what I can do. I can do it, but you can't. There's no purpose for that. But if I could leave here and somebody said, that was a good demo, I'm going to go home and I can do this, then I'm going to be happy. So, thank you.
No, I saw your piece and I thought, I am the
Hell,
too.
did he do that? I was thought about what to do.
I was thinking a whole lot of problems.
I left this wood here for just a little bit additional support. So now we've got a couple different grain patterns that develop in a piece of wood. On one side, we're going to have like this cascading sort of effect with the grain. Now the other side, we just have straight lines. So we don't want to disturb this, so we're going to cut along that straight grain.
You're talking about the grain pattern?
Yes. Let's rotate it up so you
Yeah,
can see it.
right, we got it.
There it is. So we don't want to disturb that, so we're going to rotate it and make our cut over here. Now I can ask that nobody makes any noise, nobody sneezes or anything. No, I'm kidding.
Could you have laid that on your rest, two rests to make sure you're staying parallel?
I guess so, but I'd probably wreck the tool rest and the saw blade. I sell these things. They dice, chop, they do everything. So afterwards you can buy more from me. I'm just kidding. This is a traditional Japanese type pull saw.
It is important you watch that line.
Yes. If you go off the line, you're doomed. You can't get back on. And you can tell your wall thickness as you saw through. If it gets really easy, you know you got way too thin. There we go. Now, I'm going to turn my speed down. Now I'm going to finish cutting this. don't like to cut on the push stroke. They're so thin and flexible. Eventually you get the feel for it. It works really well that way.
Is there any particular reason why you use that instead of a bandsaw?
Yes. Seriously, the question was, why do I use this rather than a bandsaw? I did attempt these on a bandsaw, cut them through the middle like this, and believe me, when it's this long, this big around, an eighth of an inch thick, the minute the bandsaw touches it, bang, it's gone. And plus, it's not that safe either. So, and it doesn't take that long. So we've done this. We've hollowed it out. You can see where I stopped with my skew chisel, but I got a fairly uniform wall thick because I wasn't paying really strict attention. But now, it's almost magic when you do this to it and you just shift it. And now I get this.
That is curved.
And so something that looks like that's not possible to do this on the lathe, now I flatten the edges and I put it together. And so the one I did yesterday, you can see if I were to cut this apart, I could complete the circles for this one. I could cut it off at any size I wanted and continue this curve and really complete the form. And there's several different ways of doing this.
If you cut it off right at the point when it got down to small, cut it off there, can you fit and left a way to put it back in the lathe? Could you fit one inside the other so it's almost wrapped?
You can do anything you want to do.
That's how you do the camera.
Yeah, and this went back on the lathe. You can see it's been another block added here to put it right back on the lathe again, shape the base, put a tenon on it. Some I leave the base big so it goes together and I have enough material to turn a whole entire base one piece. This has to be straight, and you see this one's fairly straight, so it's going to glue up very easily. Everything lines up, the grain even matches. And so even if the grain is a slight angle, it still matches. So this one would be fairly successful. This one would work. I turn a rose, and I think I've got enough time yet to go through. Remember how my bottle stoppers kind of went from one stage to another? I started out with this one, with a base, and then I did one that kind of went like this. And then I carved a spiral at the base, and the base was one piece. This one also is on permanent public display in Hong Kong. The problem with this one was I won a big international award with it. And then he initially wanted it, then he didn't want it. And then it won the award, then he wanted it, and so would someone else. That was a pretty good dilemma to be in, so he bought me a new lathe. But I went from that, and by simply making smaller cones, I can glue them together and make a spiral. So, you know when we talk about that Fibonacci series and the golden rectangles, and if you stack them, you get that really nice spiral? Well, that's what influenced me on here, just that nice spiral form. And so I discovered I could take a piece, a smaller one, and decrease my radius. So now I can do something like this, bring it down lower, and do some really nice shapes with it. And so my design isn't really limited at all. I can keep going on and on and on and see what I can come up with. Then one day I was thinking, I wish I could make a wall that wasn't straight. This relies on a straight wall. What if I could curve my wall inward like that? And it took me a long time to finally figure out that I could do it. As long as I kept the shape the same, I could do something like this, where the wall came around and I made a vase that swirled inward. And then I said, aha, if I rounded this over and put a tenon on it, I can add, I guess you would call it the calyx of a rose with the seed pod here, and there you go.
So your inner circles are still straight, right?
No, the inner circles now are curved, all curved the same.
It's got to be curved.
Yep, now they've got a mat, so I have this, and I have this, and I have this, and I cut each one in half, and I glue this one to that one, to that one, and they all line up. And I take the outer one, the original shell from one side, and I bring it back over, and as it decreases, it allows that shape to come back together. And I just put, if you look at my website, you'll see the seam. So it's almost unlimited what I can do with this idea. So when I did my rose, I'm a gardener. I had a lot of rose bushes at one time. So when I did my rose, I did the spiral, I did the flower. I took thorns off some of my dead rose plants I put on there. And I talked about that element of almost. So I made the root come out of the block almost all the way through to the ground. And block inside is hollow. It's got a threaded little flower blossom in the bottom. So if you flip it over, you don't expect to see this with a flower inside. And that flower is threaded and it comes out, so it's a box. And this is all completely turned on the lathe. 3 axes is here, all turned, and the cube is turned as well. So I entered this one in the contest. He said, you need to put that in the carving section, not the turning, because there's no turning. I said, excuse me, but the whole thing is turned. And he said, yeah, really.
Did those more elaborate one still start from one cone?
Yes.
And you subdivided the cone?
Like that's 3 cones now. Each one gets smaller, smaller, smaller.
But one major cone?
Yeah, it all starts with a major cone. Then I take a smaller cone and I build it inside. And then I take even a smaller one and I put it in here. So there's 3 of them. And they're all exactly the same shape. If I'm off, everything shows. So my rose is 1.5 inches high and less than a 16th inch thick when it's done. Very delicate, and so it's very tedious to produce one of those things. So I tell people I turn cubes on a lathe, and they say, sure you do.
Round stuff.
A lathe can only make round stuff, we all know that. So I was doing a demo, and I talked about the interaction between circles and squares. Has anybody ever thought of that? How much time do we have?
As much time as you want.
If I draw a straight line,
About 25 minutes.
okay, perfect. I draw a straight line, and I make a point anywhere on that line, I can erect a perpendicular to it with a compass. So I mark here with a compass, here from a compass from there, swing an arc here, 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 and here, draw a straight line. So I erected a 90-degree perpendicular. I know that because I spent a year's detention in the geometry class. I challenged my teacher, said, if you show up for class one more time without your homework, you're getting a year's detention. Well, guess who came the next day without his homework? I got kicked off the baseball team. I lost all of that, but in the end it was worth it, I think. But if I do that same thing, what I'm really doing, I'm drawing a circle. If I continue that arc that I drew and the arc that I drew, I'm really drawing 2 circles. And the intersection of 2 circles is a straight line, 90 degrees, perfect. You can actually take some of these concepts and have this draw a circle now where you got 90 degrees perpendicular and connect a line, you've got a perfect square. So that these squares and circles are interconnected all over the place. I wish sometimes I could turn it off. When you're trying to go to sleep and you're seeing circles and squares.
Just like the guy that blew the bubble and had the square in the center of the bubble.
I don't know how they do that.
There's several circles.
Yes.
And in the center of it was a square.
And it turns automatically, it turns into a square. And I've seen that in turning. You can see now I'm going to turn a cube on lathes using this idea. And
But you're not going to let that teacher know that, right?
what's that?
That having math in early math that you learned something that you use now.
No.
Don't ever.
I think they're probably long gone. In fact, this teacher was so angry at me, she slapped me so hard, she knocked me out of my chair. I was a problem child.
Your inmates would
Mama
be
told
proud.
you you'd be in prison one day.
That's right. And I didn't disappoint her.
Do not think outside the box.
So you're probably starting to think I have some problems. And I thought you'd all kind of took that for granted by now. But anyway, we want to turn a cube.
Now, if you'd like me, the problem's got me. I don't have a problem, the problem's got me.
Now, we want to make this exciting. So,
Terry's the king.
Leave the chuck loose.
we can leave the chuck loose, but we're going to also use nothing but a skew chisel.
To make something flat, I'm a square, you gotta use something flat.
Now, we want to find the center of this pretty much. Not bad. And we want to find, we need a measurement. This will work. We'll use this as our measuring guide, about 2 inches. Sometimes we have to improvise. Pardon?
It's cherry, isn't it?
Cherry, yeah.
I smell it.
You can smell it, I think.
How dry is it?
Now we'll get my measuring tool out. That's good. So now, we're going to rotate this a little bit.
This is when you aggravate a woodworker, isn't it?
Pardon?
This is when you aggravate a woodworker. You say, I can make something square.
And they say, why not use the table saw?
I ain't got a table saw.
My table saw is covered with turning blanks, drying pieces, and so it's not available right now.
Actually, my lady sits on top of my table saw.
So now, this takes very precise measuring. That's accurate within a few thousandths, probably.
At least.
just simply a peeling cut. You don't want to expose the whole cutting edge at once. That could be disastrous. That. Now we're going to take one more step. Again, precision is very important. Oh, I forgot, if I can pass a few cards around with what that finished piece looks like. If anybody wants to keep those, are more than welcome. So the So when I'm done, if I did it right, I'd end up with a cube. I've still got all the tendons sticking out, but I still have a cube. So now I can mount this in a chunk, get rid of 3 of them that way, and the rest I make wooden jaws for my lathe. I just part off the rest of them, and we have a cube that's turned entirely on the lathe. And the idea is, thank you.
Yeah, the idea is.
The idea is, if I can turn a cube, what else can I turn?
A triangle, a pyramid.
You can turn a block of cheese, which is much harder than this, but it can be done. So if anybody's interested in like a $500 bottle stopper, let me know. But
Well, you know, really, you could put bottle stoppers on all 4 of those coming out, drill them, and really have a really unique one that, you know, you could have 5.
You can rotate it.
That's right. Man, wouldn't that be neat?
you can't go wrong.
Seasonal bottle stopper, right.
But I've done this demonstration, and then I watched somebody take this idea and put it, and all you have to do is hollow the circles out. And somebody's mentioning, when you hollow those circles out, you form a cube inside. You break the corners free, and you've got a floating cube inside of this cube, all done on a lathe. Jeff, why didn't I think of that? I was almost there and he beat me to it. So that's good. I've seen a hollow form and a bowl inside of a cube after somebody went to one of my demonstrations. So maybe I could feed your creative process, and that's the idea. Anybody hear of Garrett Hack? He's a pretty well-known woodworker. He's always up at Showcase in Saratoga. So he looked at my rose and said, "You trying to tell me you turned that cube?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And he's like, "It cannot be done." So the next year I came up and I did this. I turned a rose, and then I only used basically half the pieces, so then I made another rose over here. This one spiraled one way, this one spiraled the opposite way. And then I put it in I finished the rose, and then I made the little flower bud things. And then the stem went together and it twisted, and when I turned it on this axis and this axis, and I ended up with a bulge in the middle, and I carved a spiral down through here, and I set it on a block of wood, and the root coming out again, I put it on a burl. So now I got this axis, I got all these roses, and Garrett Hack said to me the next year, he's like, "I give up. I have no clue how you did it." I'm like, "Yeah." And I said, since he didn't like my little cube the year before, I'm not going to tell you how I did it. But I had to turn these two, and then I put my center right between, and then I turned the rest of the body, then I carved it all out. It's on my website somewhere. And I've only done one of those, and I never want to do one of those again.
That's not a duplication.
That was difficult. That was very hard. Some of this stuff doesn't seem that hard, but some of it it makes your head hurt trying to think about it.
That was called making a statement.
I think so.
That one comes from, not a cube, but a cell block.
Yeah. But hopefully I got done in time, and I left some time for some questions. So if anybody's got any questions. Yes?
On the S shape, how do you make the base? What, is it a tendon, or?
Yeah, and the question is, how do I make a base on those S pieces? I can take a block, drill a hole in it, form it, and I put the tenon right in, and there's my base. So pretty simple. Sometimes I'll form a bead of ebony, put between the two. And so on my business card, it has a little ebony bead in there, just to really break it up. I took pieces of holly, black veneer, holly, black veneer, holly, black veneer, and I made the lines in between. And that's how I did that.
Okay, how do you turn the tendon once you've got the two sides glued together? Is that what the block's for?
Yeah. And how I do that, there we go. I literally put it back on the lathe like this. Like that. And then I draw this up. And this is really nice on a hot day because it cools you off. Now I turn the tenon down here. So now I'm a multi-axis artist and I can charge more for my work. Any other questions?
When you glue two pieces together, laminate them, and you want the glue line to become part of the design, what kind of glue are you promoting?
This is Type Bond 3, but I use Type Bond 1. Except, this looks like it's clear or white.
It dries, it is white, and it dries clear.
And I've never used this before, but I do a lot of holly, so I've got to check
It's
this out.
supposed to be stronger than the other two, the original or two.
It's a little dark, dries a little darker than the Type Bond one.
Does it? See, with holly, you want a very invisible glue line. The nice thing about holly, if it's not perfect, is white, ivory, white, off-white paint and an airbrush covers that glue line up perfectly. You can't see it. So I give it a light coating if I have to. A lot of them I don't have to touch it. You literally can't see the glue joint.
Yeah, yesterday as we sanded those back, you couldn't see those.
Yeah, it goes away. Any other?
Yeah, when you're
do the spirals, how do you clean the seam down in, when you do the inside seams that are way down inside?
How I do that is the same way we did the bigger pieces. On those, I hate to admit this, but I've used a jointer on my bigger pieces. It could be very dangerous. On my little pieces, I find a flat surface and I sand it. Even the little tiny ones.
Actually, I was meaning more towards after you've attached it.
Okay.
You get the glue cleaned out where you can't see the line anymore.
Okay, well I do that. I get this together. I assemble the little ones first. Then,
So you build inwards out.
Okay, you start from the inside, go out.
yes. Then the outside is easy to sand.
Yeah.
Now, the inside is difficult to sand. So I take a piece of veneer like this, and I glue a whole block of sandpaper to a piece of veneer. And now I can cut it to shape, any shape I want.
So you get down in
And I go down in there with the sandpaper, and the closer my joint is to fitting properly. So, if the outside's easy to sand, but the inside is hard, I line my joints up on the inside perfectly. If it's off on the outside, I can sand that minor irregularity right away. Now on the inside, I'll take my abrasive and I gradually work that until the glue's all gone and you can't see the glue joint. So when you're talking 10, 12 hours on one little blossom, it's very tedious work. So it's just meticulous work, and sometimes you sit wondering, why on earth am I doing this? I should be making a bowl or something, but that's how I do it. Then I put the next piece on, and I sand it. The outside's easy. And then the last piece, I shape it. So if I'm doing my rows, the very last piece goes together like this. I've got a spiral. Here's my glue joint here. When I bring this piece that covers that up, you don't even see the outside of it, you only see the inside. So I take my time, I blend it down inside. Now I bring my last piece here, the last piece that I cut off, and I put it back here. I glue it on, it comes around, and in this end, I'm going to taper it down. So when I rotate it to the front, it's going to come along like a pedal, and then up at the bottom, and then it comes in like this, like that, and there it is. It comes around, it looks like part of the pedal just flowing away. And you've got to just work that and get it thin so when it comes down to that seam, nothing hits. It's just very meticulous working in there and getting it. But when it's done, people look at it and say, how on earth did you do it?
That's why you spend
That can't be done.
Yeah. But it can be done. Any other questions?
Got one more over there?
Yes.